I got to meet a lot of great people. Don't get me wrong, but it was okay. It was that look in my eye that your teacher had.
Hey, welcome back to another installment of the Perspective Podcast. My name is Devon. This is my co-host Mitch Harley, and today on the show we have Rob Garcia, a full-time professional musician, which is a little bit different than some of the conversations we've had recently. And I just want to kind of start things off with a story that I think is super relatable. I too am a musician and am on the path of pursuing music as a career. And one of the things that has kind of motivated me and driven me to stay in this place is a teacher that I had in high school. And in fact, he wasn't even my teacher. He was just a teacher that was cool enough that I just wanted to hang out and talk to him. And as it turns out, he, when he was growing up, had a band, had a couple of really great singles, but never really broke out into the mainstream, never really made it into the musician as a career kind of status. And when he talked about his life in music and the things that he experienced, there was this pain that I could see in him, because he put down that dream and moved on from it to pursue a career as a music teacher in a high school full of teenagers who didn't care as much as he did about that stuff. And I remember just seeing the look in his eyes and thinking to myself, when he was talking about that stuff, I never want to be this guy. I never want to be the guy that tried that thing and then it didn't work out and I gave up and I moved on. And just in the initial preamble before we hit record, Rob had started talking about how he is a full-time musician and has figured out how to earn a living and support himself doing that. And so, Rob, I'm going to pass it over to you, and I'd love to kind of start with how you fell into this, how you moved into the space of being a musician, what drew you to it, and why is that your passion?
Okay. So I'm also going to add from the preamble, and I'll fill it in as we go, but I was a stockbroker for 10 years too. And that look that your teacher had in his eyes was the look that I had in my eyes when I looked in the mirror as a stockbroker. Just saying to myself, this is not a real thing for me. I'm not this guy. And I did it for 10 years. So I gave it the old college try. Now, let's rewind. 6th grade for me, and I'm 59 years of age. I bought Kiss Alive, and I had been exposed to music much earlier, the Beatles, the Stones, all that stuff. And it was good music and I enjoyed it, but very much passively, like a fan would. And I saw the excitement that it created in the generation before me that turned me on to all this music. I have cousins that were very much into music early on. So we're at 6th grade now, and I pick up Kiss Alive. And are you there? Okay, yeah, you're still there. Yeah. My phone blanked for a second. I pick up Kiss Alive, and it's revelatory. It changed everything. It was this music that was bigger than life. It was exciting. All the kids at school were going bananas for it, and I had to make that noise. So got a guitar, took lessons. Within a year, I was playing my 7th grade dance. At that point, I was living in New York, and New York City was I was living in Staten Island, and New York City was a ferry ride away. And New York was bristling with music and arts at that time. It was also a very gritty, shady place too. But I made my way to hang out at Bleecker Street. I was like a lost puppy. Hang around these guys that were called club musicians, and they would laugh, they would talk, they would hang out, and regaling one another with tales of, I did this wedding and the bride did that. I did this social event and this happened and it was fun. And I just learned this new song. Have you heard the lick on this and that? And it was magic for me. It was the environment that I wanted to be in. Now, in the preamble, I said, never really wanting to be a rock star. That's half truth. Everybody, I believe, when they start, wants to be a rock star or wants to be famous. And, but it wasn't my main motivation. My main motivation was to be a musician. Like these guys. These guys supported families. There was a code and an etiquette amongst them that was really cool, honorable. And that's where it started. So I wound up playing. You hang around these guys long enough, and sooner or later you get quote unquote willed a gig. Someone can't make it. They try all that circle of community that they're in. No one can make it. And then they look at you and they're like, shit, can I curse on this?
Yeah.
They're like, shit, he's the only one left. So everybody remembers the movie Dirty Dancing. So some of my first gigs were in the Catskills, playing for a bar mitzvah band. And I enjoyed the hell out of it. And I wasn't great at it either. I was okay at it, but I got taught by a lot of really cool musicians that were on those gigs in the car, little tips and tricks. And it was magical for me. From there, I got older. The 80s came in, and I was a long-haired, spandex-wearing, dog collar wearing rock and roller. And New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut in the early 80s had a scene. I wouldn't say that it rivaled Los Angeles at the time, but it was great. It was a great scene. There were millions of clubs in New Jersey to play. There were millions of clubs in Long Island, all over the place. And the drinking age was 18 in those states back then. So it didn't matter if the band had a quote unquote following. You were able to expose yourself to a lot of people. And then the following came later. From the 80s into the 90s, things changed. The age limit went up to 21. The bar started losing business left and right. And just the logistics of having 5 guys on a stage and getting them paid became a more difficult proposition. So I had to recalculate. And I learned how to sing so that I could do solo work, because I had heard back in those days of Bleecker Street that guys would do solo gigs. I didn't have any idea. And somewhere I have a recording of me the first time singing. And the sound harkens to a chicken getting its legs ripped off. There was no hope. But I was determined. And somehow, and to this day, I'm still in disbelief that people like my voice. I'm not a singer. I'm a guitar player. But people tend to find a connection when they're at my gigs with my voice or my style. And again, I'm not a rock star. I'm not looking to be a rock star. I have no false aspirations of a 59-year-old balding guy to become the next Justin Bieber. I just do it every day. As soon as I get off the phone with you, I'm going to a gig, and I make a modest living. But the self-satisfaction of a life's dream and a life's journey is the payoff.
So I would really love to unpack that a little bit more, just in terms of, if you're happy, the amount of money that you're earning doesn't really relate to it in terms of being able to support yourself and the lifestyle that you want. But as long as you're happy and you're pursuing that passion, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that the age of the internet has really tainted the way people perceive what success is.
Absolutely.
So for you in the position that you're in, sure, granted, not some, bazillionaire famous rock star with 100 million fans, but you're not that teacher. You're not Mr. J with the dead look in your eye. And how does that affect the things that you still do day to day? Like the I guess, resilience to continue to pursue it in some meaningful way.
So let's go back to the stockbroker. The stockbroker never knocked the cover off the ball. I was never $1 million producer. At best, I was keeping afloat by comparison to my peers. But in the stock brokerage world back then, that was a lot of money, especially for a guy like me. To be an average stockbroker meant you were living the life of probably the top 5% in the United States. And I was not happy. I had a lot of toys. I was not happy. Inside, I was dying. And the realization came that my happiness came from this childhood passion, dream journey that was just inside of me. I don't even know how to explain it. I don't think any musician could explain it, except they use the term burning desire all the time.
I always say, you may leave music, but music will never leave you.
No, and I couldn't leave music. That was the problem. So, I'm not living in a penthouse and I'm not driving a Porsche, but I live in Florida and I'm surrounded by palm trees. That's my car. I have a little Kia Rio. And I live a very peaceful, enjoyable life. I have a daughter that that was the advice that I gave her, when she was leaving high school. She was like, what do I do? Do I go to college? What do I do? I don't know. She's 25 now. And a brilliant singer, by the way. She went to LaGuardia School of Performing Arts. No joke, that school, when it comes to performance. But I told her, follow your passion. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you want to be a street sweeper. Follow your passion. If you're happy, you land. You're quote unquote at peace with yourself. And that's the only way I could explain it. I'm at peace with myself. I have, I'm always looking for the 100 million followers, by the way. If anybody listening wants to be one of those 100 million, by all means. But I enjoy making people happy. I enjoy helping people forget about their lives, whether it be mundane or I have friends that are doctors and lawyers. They say, I wish I could do what you could do. And they're extremely successful, extremely powerful. But in a way, they have that burning desire that they never followed. And to me, it outweighs everything else.
There's a switch that I think flips. And just listening to you talk, it reminds me of Gary Vaynerchuk has this really famous saying, you're working a job you hate to pay for shit you don't need, to impress people you don't like. And I feel like the stockbroker version of you was literally that, I guess, in a textbook sort of manner. And so how do you walk me through that? How do you just let go of that Like you probably had money. You said you had the toys. You're surrounded by all these powerful people, and was it just one day I quit and you walked away, or how did that happen for you?
Believe it or not, it was one day.
Wow.
It was one day. I had been married at the time. As much money as we had money problems because we kept on spending more than we had. I'm not ashamed to say that I was also addicted to alcohol and drugs. And, everybody says that these musician types are the ones leading the life of all of that. And I'll tell you what, stockbrokers make musicians look like Boy Scouts.
I've heard some stories myself.
So one day I woke up and I said, I can't. I had the night before, my wife then and I decided to get divorced, it was like one cable of the bridge getting snapped. And then the next day I went into work, took the elevator up. The elevator doors opened and I stayed in the elevator and I looked at that boardroom and I saw a bunch of people that I could not relate to. They looked at me too in the elevator and I wouldn't get out of the elevator. The elevator doors closed. I went back down and I walked away. And at first, the company that I worked for, which shall remain nameless, but it was one of the top 5 brokerage houses in New York City. They said, we've seen this before. We're going to give you family leave time. And I used up the family leave time. And they said, we've seen this before. We're going to give you, you're probably having a breakdown. We're going to give you medical time off, then vacation time. Almost a year. They kind of prorated my salary and paid for me to live. And actually, it was a very productive year because I had made the decision to regroup. And I also got sober in that year. This is 20 years ago. With sobriety came clarity. And I started an AV company, an audio video company in New York City. And I did that till about 2008. And that was cool. That was actually a very cool job. I felt like a very big deal. I was really enjoying it, made a fair amount of money. But I was the guy that was setting up the microphones for the people that were going to be singing on them at all of these events.
That's painful.
I got to meet a lot of great people. Don't get me wrong. But it was okay. It was that look in my eye that your teacher had. And then 2008 came and it wiped away that whole affluent market of having parties, these big ostentatious parties in New York. And I got out. It wasn't paying the bills. It was more hassle than it was worth. I got out and I said, you know what? No more beating around the bush. I was a musician and that's what I was going to be. And I was going to start all over again. But if I was going to invest that kind of time, I was going to do it for keeps. And I did,
So with the audio visual company, the AV company, you started that on your own?
Yes.
Okay, so this is great. So how did the experience of starting that company and running that company translate into what you're doing now as a musician? Were there kind of transferable skills that you developed in that experience?
It was a journey. So I had a fair idea from being a musician all that time. I had a fair idea of how to connect stuff together. So that was a little bit of a transformation. I started off working for a company in New York as a quote unquote, for lack of a better word, roadie. So this company was just bustling with business and they would just send you on all these jobs and they showed me the ropes of how to do that. And I was like, well, shit, man, I could do this and I could do it better. I could do it more catered to the client without being that big 20 trucks, 50 employee type of company. I could do it one-on-one and I'll be a boutique. And that's how it started. I wound up becoming friends, allies with a number of that company's clients and assets. And from there, we kind of all decided, let's do this for ourselves. So we started off small. I had made an arrangement with one of the companies that I worked for, their competitors. I made an arrangement with them that, look, you've got these trucks, you've got these PA systems, you've got these lights and plasma screens, and they sit dormant in your warehouse over the weekend. You do nothing but corporate work. Let me rent them at a good price where we could both make money. It'll help you. It'll definitely help me. And it was a great arrangement. And then as time went on, I bought my own stuff. Still very cottage industry, though. Still very small. And it went from there. You know, it went from there.
Something you mentioned that kind of sits with me. So you made the comment earlier that, you know, your first singing gig wasn't necessarily your best work, and but you're a musician regardless, right? And so you like playing your guitar. That's your jam, and the singing kind of goes with it. But you still manage to connect with people, even though maybe your standards are, you know, you're not meeting a standard that you think is acceptable, but people are still enjoying it. And I find that very important, not just in the music world, but in the entrepreneur world, in people's lives. We can't be good at everything. And the unicorns that are, in the music world, let's name a couple. Steven Tyler. That guy can sit down at any instrument and be incredible. He has a distinct voice. There's a reason he's been the lead singer of Aerosmith for years. And you can go through and find other musicians that are very similar. They have this knack. No matter what they do, they can sing, they can play, they can, you know, choreography. They can put on a show, and they're that unicorn effect of that rock star that everyone strives to be. But the reality is, all of us have strengths and we have weaknesses. And I think what's very special about what you said was, you know, you're good at guitar, and it's okay to admit that. If you're good, you're good, right? We can always learn more, but you're good enough to make a living at it. And your singing, for your standard, is mediocre enough to get people to follow you, to enjoy you, to support you, and to continue your dream. And I think that's a huge lesson that can be taken away from this, because some people will stop doing something they're good at because the complementary thing that goes with it, they're not very good at that. So they feel because they can't be 110% of the entire package, that they can't do anything. And I think your example kind of sets a precedent that as long as you're trying the rest, if you focus on what you're good at, people will follow you. They don't have the same expectations of you that you have. And as long as you're enjoying what you're doing, they will feed off the enjoyment, not just the talent. They'll feed off the aura that you put out, that positive energy. And I think for you, just for meeting you on this, you put out that positive energy because you've been down the rock bottom in a sense, and you've come over challenges, whether it's sobriety, whether it's, you know, money problems. You've kind of pushed through that to a point where you found a sense of contentment. And I think that will come across to people, and it obviously draws people to you, especially through your performances. That's something that I picked up kind of out of this story that I think is very important for our listeners.
I've always been of the belief, and I think Eleanor Roosevelt was the person who invented this quote, but do what you can with what you have right now. And I'm a big believer in, and again, I'm going to curse, throwing shit up against the wall and see what sticks, because that's trial and error. Thomas Edison did it no different than Steven Tyler did it. You know, you do what you can with what you have right now. And I'm not belittling, I don't mean to belittle the people that are looking for perfection, but perfection rarely exists.
And perfection is also in the eye of the beholder, right?
Right.
It's about what standard you hold. And no matter what topic we're talking about, I mean, there could be singers that feel they're never good enough, but yet they're in that 1%, right? But they could be in the 1%, but if they don't view themselves as good enough, what purpose does it serve?
Yeah, I over years, over decades, over my life, I've come to terms with, I'm lucky enough to do what I do. I do it every day, so there's something there. I'm not going to say that I don't understand it. I'm going to say that I look at it differently. So my standards are higher. I'm always striving for more, but the reality is that somehow, it's good enough and people enjoy it. And you know what? The satisfaction of that enjoyment comes back at me all the time. Some people will say,
off that energy.
Yeah. I'll tell you, one of those powerful people that I spoke to you about is one of my best friends. He's a doctor in Canada. And he comes to see me play a lot. And I'm always saying, let's hang out when I'm not playing. And we do. But I tell him, you've seen me so many friggin' times. You could probably do this gig better than I could. Why do you keep coming? I could do it for you when you're home if you wanted me to. And he told me, he says, you're not getting what you put out to people. He goes, when you joke on the microphone, even when you make a mistake in the way you handle it, it's for lack of a better word, and to use a grandiose word, perhaps for him, he explained it to me that it's an experience that you just, you don't get it anywhere else. And I can understand that because it's unique to myself, but it's an experience. And if other people could feel that, regardless of what I understand it to be, good, bad, or indifferent, that's my purpose in life.
My guitar teacher said the best musicians are the ones who cover up their mistakes and nobody knows.
I don't know how well I cover them up, but I could joke around with them. And you know what? It's a fleeting moment in time. I'm not going to let it worry me. I guess good enough is a great phrase for today's podcast and going out there and doing it. Some gigs I do, I come away blown away at how great it sounds. We just did a gig in a theater in Homestead, me and a buddy of mine. And we do that from time to time. And the sound man recorded it from the board. And we had a tremendously good time. But my perception of that gig on stage going forward through it was so different internally than what I heard when I got the recording later. I literally put it up on the website because I was so proud of it. I didn't hear it that way at the time because I was in the moment. It was jubilation for me on stage in a big theater with great sound and stuff like that. But perhaps because I've had this ideal of quote unquote, I'm good enough, I didn't hear it as good as it sounded to me later. It sounded great to me later. Very proud of it. So it's a different perception when you're on the stage, when you're doing it. It's a completely different thing.
I also want to ask you about sentiment, because I think that sometimes letting go or making change is very hard for people. So,
sure.
You talked about leaving the stock world. Even though you weren't happy, there's still a level of sentiment because that's what you did for 10 years. So there's that level of comfort. And then, you give up a business that you started. So there's a little bit of sentiment there. And then you realize you got to move on to something else. And then you do something else and there's sentiment. And especially when it's something you're passionate about, letting go is hard. And some people will sink their lives with a drowning dream because of sentiment. So, what allowed you to admit to yourself that I need a change, or that this is a good way of going, especially leaving the AV company, for example. You know, some people, even though they're bleeding money, would still stick with it until they had nothing left. But you had clarity enough to say, I'm going to move on to something else. How did you stop sentiment from holding you back?
So all the signals were clear for me to move forward. I will say that I learned a lot. And look, those 10 years as a stockbroker were not me, and I wasn't happy, but I learned a lot. I learned about business. I learned about how to look at the world that I live in differently from that. I could see economies. And again, perfunctory. I'm not an economist, but there were great and valuable learning experiences, both in business, perseverance, determination. You know, I think if you're driven enough, you could do, to varying degrees of success, you could do what you want. So I wasn't sentimental about leaving those situations. I was grateful for what I had gotten from them. And I don't know, for lack of a better word, I'm just going to say internally, I knew it was time to move on. Those things were no longer valuable to me. So, but I'm grateful for the learning experiences of it all. And I had great times too. I make it sound like, you know, Wall Street was a nightmare. I had some great times as well.
There's I don't know, weirdly, maybe if it's just a theme or common theme in my world right now, but gratitude seems to be popping up a lot everywhere
Huge.
I go. It's here's the thing, right? I have a 7-year-old son, and when he was born, there's a great responsibility that comes with, bringing another human being into this world and teaching them everything they know to be able to navigate it, because it's complex and scary. And one of the things I recognized was you're not born with gratitude or being grateful for things. There's an expectation, I think, initially, even as a baby. Obviously, I need sustenance to survive, and so give me, right? And that's just our default mode. And as we get older, some people are fortunate enough early on in their lives to have that kind of ingrained in them or installed in them, and other people find it later. And I think I was one of the people that found it later. And it's something that you have to practice. It's not something, like I said, it comes normal. It's a thing that you have to practice. And when you talk about just how, well, I'm grateful for having the experience of, X, Y, or Z, it speaks a lot to your character, but also to the fact that you've been so resilient through those changes. Do you think that has contributed to your flexibility in terms of growth?
Yes. I learned gratitude and empathy later in life also. I learned gratitude. Anybody who's ever become sober, and I did it through AA. I did it the hard way. I did it cold turkey. I didn't go to one of these. I could have gone to one of these rock star retreats or whatever, but I did it the really down and dirty, old fashioned way, and it was a nightmare. But they were great. It was an incredible community of people that have overcome unbelievable situations. And you learn empathy for them. You learn to say to yourself, well, shit, man, I thought my situation was bad. Look what that person had to go through. And then you learn gratitude by the progress that you make. And through that process, I think it stays with someone, at least for me, because I know people learn gratitude in different ways other than becoming sober, but it stays with you. And I tell my daughter, it's little things in life, smell roses, because life's a journey, and you're going to have ups and downs, and you might have really high highs, really low lows. But at the end, hopefully, what you have is somewhat of an elevated, maybe not the median line, maybe it's a little bit higher. And you could be grateful for that, quality of life.
Yeah, it goes a long way. And I think it's so funny too. It points at the title of our podcast is The Perspective, is just the way that you interpret the world around you, the way that you see the things that happen, and what you take from it. Because some people can, I guess, operate from a victim mentality in terms of like, well, this happened to me and that happened to me. And I'm sure that if you look back through your own timeline, there's a lot of things that you can say, well, that happened to me, so therefore I can't have this other thing. But the fact that you haven't done that, I think, has lended considerably to the path that you're on and the people that you serve along the way. And I'd love to get your perspective on this. Because I think it's almost, if you don't figure that shit out right away and you don't embrace it fully, it becomes an emergency in terms of the people that you were meant to help now go without your help. So when you talked about, when I'm on stage and I enjoy being able to help people take a break from whatever shit is going on in their lives, that's the purpose. That's the thing. That's the, the reward, the intrinsic value that you get from it. How did you become aware of that? And how do you think it lends to you continuing on your path?
2 points to be made there. One is, since I was a child, I've always had this, if you could do it, I could do it. So if it's been done before, no fear in trying. You crash and burn. And I had another point, and I forgot it in explaining the first point.
Yeah, that's really good though, is building the parachute on the way down. I love this analogy.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you just have to jump.
Absolutely. I've always jumped. And I will tell you, I will be the first to tell you that I have made some dreadful mistakes jumping. Things that when you're done with them in hindsight, you say, what the fuck was I thinking? But it seemed like a good idea at the time. You learn from them.
Well, on that note, as you made the transition from, company to company and from space to space, you did end up landing in the world of music. And I'd love to kind of just tap into that a little bit in terms of, if there's another musician that's listening to this and wants to kind of set their lives up in a way that music makes them money and all that kind of stuff. Can you unpack a little bit for us the world of music as business? Like what is it that you do? How do you earn your income?
Yeah. The first thing is have something that is a product, something that you could sell, because you're gonna wind up selling no matter what. A musician who's like, oh, I'm a musician, man, I don't have to sell. Well, that's bullshit. You're a business and you've got to sell yourself. So, 2 steps in the beginning is get your music together, get it something that you feel is presentable as an act, for whatever venue you're in, whether it's an original act or a covers act. I play a lot of covers. Get something presentable. Also, side note, get everybody's email that you possibly can, because they're going to be your audience. They're going to be your network. That's something that I learned later too. Obtain as much contact information from as many people as possible. If you could start your career with an email list or a database of 10,000 people, chances are 200 or 300 of them are going to be your core following. And I mean hardcore following. Then from there, you just got to knock on doors and be persistent. When I came, I had a business in New York of, a network of clubs and places that would hire me. And I moved to Florida and the doors would shut left and right. We already have our guys. We don't need you. And ultimately, persistence, frustration, determination, whatever it was, I would just show up at the clubs with my guitar and say, look, give me 15 minutes. You've got a crowd here. Give me 15 minutes. If your crowd doesn't love me, I will never call you again. You'll never hear from me ever. But if they do love me, then we pull out our calendars. And that worked. That was 15 years ago, and I'm still here.
I love that. It reminds me of like my early days as a musician before Napster ruined the music industry. We used to sell CDs out of our trunk. There was this guy, his name was Chain Reaction. He's always posted up on one side of the street, and we would set up on the other side of the street, and all the people funneling out of the bars and clubs at the end of the night would see us, putting on this impromptu performance with a little boom box that we plugged into the funeral home outlet.
That's marketing. You're marketing to a like-minded audience, and that's what you got to do as a musician. I guarantee you that if I played in front of a crowd of younger, hip-hop oriented people, they would hate me.
I never asked. What is the kind of music that you do?
So I'm right now. I do some. I would call my original music kind of new classic rock sounding stuff, rock and roll, but with a flavor from the 70s and 80s. And I play a lot of covers here in Florida where I live. I live in Venice, which is a suburb of Sarasota. It's a resort vibe. So people go to tiki bars and they expect, I don't know, Leonard Skinner and Jimmy Buffett and stuff like that. And I do a lot of that stuff. Over the years, I've developed quite a repertoire.
So you got a wide breadth of talent.
Talent being the loose term there, but yes, I have a wide variety of things that I can do, determined by the situation and the audience.
So, okay, and I'd love to get your feedback on this because there's a bit of a generation gap, I think, between you and I. I'm only 34, so I'm not quite as experienced as you are. But the digital age,
as old as I am.
I was trying to be gentle, Rob. Sorry. In this digital age of music, have you found it challenging to navigate as far as being a musician?
No. So there are a lot of misconceptions, right? In the digital age, everybody thinks that they could be Kourtney Kardashian and be an influencer and blah, 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 blah. It's not that easy. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and this and that other thing, and I use them as tools, and I'm constantly looking to add more. And, they have, to a limited degree, helped me. But by the same token, I can't say that it wasn't this hard beforehand when you had to submit to a record company and there were gatekeepers there saying, we already have Steven Tyler. What are you going to do for us? So being a musician is not for the weak-minded or thin skin. And any business really, where you have competition. But, you're not going to avoid social media. You're not going to avoid the digital age. So you might as well join it.
Embrace it.
Embrace it, absolutely.
When it comes to dealing with haters, this is another one of those topics that a lot of people are, I guess they just lack the skills. We've offered a ton of insights on a number of other episodes. How do you manage that?
So I've been very lucky. I'm not saying without. I've dealt with haters, but not on a regular basis, like quote unquote having a group of haters that it's ever become a problem for me. It's been very rare. I try and make fun of it and you kind of disarm them. One time I could remember a long time ago, there was a guy in an audience and he said, "You suck," really loud. And I went into the microphone and I said, "Is that you, Dad?" And the whole audience did exactly what you did. And I completely
that's so great.
and I continued the show. Someone in the audience with that kind of attitude, as far as I'm concerned, it's really more their problem than mine.
Yeah, I love that. That's the direction that you take. That's often the advice that I give people, is that, well, double down on it. How can you take what they've said, make it funnier? And in more cases than not, you end up turning a hater into a fan. I remember listening to this one guy on TikTok talking about how this guy was just like, nonstop hitting him with negative comments anytime he posted something. And I don't know about you, but to me, that sounds like a fan. If you're always seeing my stuff, you're always commenting, there's something here. So the guy just DM'd him like privately and was like, "Hey man, I see your stuff all the time. It sounds to me like you're hurting. What's going on in your world?" And there was a little bit of a pushback, but inevitably the conversation came to, well, yeah, I don't feel great about whatever was going on in his life. He was facing some challenges. And so he's just out here, hurting people because that's all he knew how to do. And the fact that this guy responded with, love and humor and lightheartedness made it a lot easier for that guy. And he did end up becoming a fan and attending a concert or something. I can't remember how it all played out, but I love that that's kind of your frame in terms of how you interact with people. So, you've had a lot of different unique experiences in all these different worlds. You've landed in this music thing, and this is where you are now for the undetermined future. On that note, I'd love to get kind of a bird's eye view of like, well, where are you headed with all of this? What's next in the world of Rob Garcia?
Oh, there's a lot of things in the fire. I try and get better every day. I try and build bigger audiences. Right now, I have a focus on theaters. Prior to COVID, I was touring a lot with tribute bands, and we were doing big tours. We were doing, I did a 14-state, 38-city tour with a Woodstock revival, and that was venues of 500 to 15,000. We played the Louisiana Cajun Dome.
Wow.
Then after that, I was in an Elton John tribute band, and we did some nice gigs, and then COVID came and it ended. The production company that was helping me out kind of went into a part-time mode, and I decided during COVID, I'm going to take it on for myself. I'm going to go out and I'm going to rent the theaters myself. I'm going to do the promotion myself. And I just had my first one with the thing that I told you about in Miami. They call it four-walling. So I'm taking on the role, or taking back the role of a promoter, and doing it myself. And I hope to elevate my lifestyle to that again. And will I be satisfied with that till the day I die? I don't know. If I die tomorrow, I will be. Right. After that, you're always going to want to do more. You're going to want to play. You're going to want to play bigger places. And I've been blessed. I've traveled the world. I'm going to Germany in August to play music. I've been really blessed. So I'm always looking to elevate, but within the grasp of, you got to see yourself, and by no means sell yourself short. But for me to think that I'm going to be the next Drake, it's just not going to happen. So you got to set your goals as realistic too. Could I elevate this? Yeah, I can. I'll keep elevating till the day I die. And people have asked me, what are you going to do for retirement? And I asked them back, name one musician that didn't retire in a box. I'm going to do this till the fucking last day. I hope I die on stage. That'd be the best publicity possible.
Right. Kenny Rogers didn't make it until he was 55, and that was Gambler, and it's a historic song.
Yeah, I know it well.
Very, very, very well known. And it wasn't, he was just in pursuit of doing the thing that he knew he was called to do. And I'm sure it led him down some pretty crazy paths as well. So, you never know what fate and the universe has in store for you.
That's correct.
we are trying this new thing where we kind of end this on a note of recommended reading. In terms of, is there something that stands out in your mind over the course of your life, in terms of a book that you've read that has contributed in some way to the success that you have? And if there is, would you mind sharing that with the audience?
Well, first of all, you're assuming that I can read.
Let's say content consumption. It can be
yes, yeah.
Well, so I read a lot. I'm a voracious reader, and a lot of it is music business. If you're a musician, I recommend Donald Passman's book, Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About the Music Business. It's considered by many as there it is.
That's the one right there.
There it is.
That is definitely a must
It's the
read.
Bible. Yeah, it's the Bible. But, so I've read a lot of self-help stuff because, becoming a recovering addict needs everything that he can get on his way to recovery. So, Tony Robbins was very, very good for me. Am I going to walk on coals tomorrow? No, I'm not going to walk across coals tomorrow. But you take from it what's necessary. I've read a lot of self-help stuff, and I've been able to just take what I need enough from it. I'm never going to be a self-help guru. I'm never going to say to you guys, hey, you've got to blah, 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 every morning, like Tony Robbins jumps in a pool of cold water every morning. I'm not going to do that. I don't care how successful you are. I'm just not going to do that. So, anything that could make you, better. Reading is knowledge. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is the new rock and roll, man. It's all out there.
I love that. Rob, if somebody wanted to find you on the internet, do you got a website or a social media account you want to plug?
So right now I'm doing a thing with a duo. It's called Florida Storytellers, and the website is flstorytellers.com. And that recording that I told you about is up on the music page. If they want to, by all means, come on by. My email is there. You can contact me through the website. I have Rob Garcia, RG Solo Act on Facebook. You can find me. Just type in Rob Garcia, Florida musician. I'm here.
Awesome. We'll put some links to you in the show notes too. Rob, it's been a pleasure. I'm very grateful, in line with the show here, very grateful that you've lended your time to us and shared some of your wisdom.
Oh, it's been dynamite. I've enjoyed it immensely.
Awesome. That's it for this episode. We will see you in the next one.